Hey, welcome back. We're starting on Module 3, working with contracts now. We were kind of feeling like we've been doing a little bit of the esoteric, the concept, the design, and we're really excited to open this little app called Visual Studio and write some code. So let's go ahead and get started with that. This module is about working with contracts, and contracts are these native features of Windows 8 that if you quote-unquote subscribe to the contract or implement the contract, you're just creating some events that Windows can capture, and it can use your code to implement things in a way that is consistent for the user. So something like searching or sharing done in every single app, the way that the app defines, the way that you as the app developer define it, but done in the Windows 8 framework so that the user gets that consistent experience. So that's what we're going to be looking at. I'll show you the agenda for contracts. We're going to look at the search contract, the share contract, settings, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to file picker and play to, but we can't take the time to really dive into those ones. And then I'm going to show you how to implement some features. They're not exactly contracts, but we're going to talk about media capture, how to use an interface called the Camera Capture UI that allows you to just use the camera capture capability to capture audio, video, and still images using the frameworks without having to implement all of that yourself. So I'm going to start with search. Search is completely critical. People these days are thinking, if I have a term on my mind, if I'm wondering about the length of a blue whale, I should be able to find that information in mere milliseconds, right?
Absolutely.
I should not be more than a few keystrokes away from that information. So a user is going to get used to swiping from the right or pressing Win Q on the keyboard and jumping immediately to search. And when they search for, let's say they're searching for the word New York, by default, because they're on the search screen here, it's going to find that there are no apps on the computer called New York. But for instance, I could run down to the store and hit store, and now the store app is launched with this search already being executed against it, and now I'm finding apps that are search results for New York. I could likewise go search for New York in finance, so I could find some stock symbols on it. I could search for it in Internet Explorer, so I could do a web search on it. And I can jump around to all these different apps. And one of the huge advantages to you as the developer, you're making your own app, you want people to use it. And one of the ways to get them to use it is when they're looking for something. They're looking for blue whale, and lo and behold, they do a search for it, and they see your app right there in the list of apps that they can search, and they go, well, I should look in that app for information about a blue whale. And they click on your encyclopedia app, and all of a sudden you're giving them your information about a blue whale. So you're bringing your app to the front and center constantly. So search is an incredible experience. When you're searching inside of an app and you're typing in the search bar, you get these suggestions. And the app is responsible for bringing those suggestions to you. So for instance, I type the word new, searching the store, and it says New Zealand cricket. That's a really popular search term, I'm sure. New Zealand cricket is going to come up as a search result in the store. Now, if I type something, I'm going to start typing the name of an app I know of. I'm going to start typing Pirates. I type P-I, and it says there are 3 apps that match that search. I'm going to suggest these, but there's another app that's given as kind of a strong suggestion. This word that you typed, P-I, is actually in the title. So I'm going to not only call this a suggestion, I'm going to call it a recommendation. So it's going to give you this Pi memory trainer. Well, now, what if I type P-I-R? I'm getting awfully close to typing the word pirates, and it's giving me a strong recommendation for this Pirates Love Daisies app. Now, the store behavior is that if I click on a suggestion, it takes me to the search results, like you see over here on the left already. But if I click on a recommendation, it takes me directly to that detail page. So that's a really good experience for the user.
Yeah, and while you're still in there, I think it's also important just to emphasize the fact that we've been saying this all day, that when you're in search, what you have the ability to do or understand is that it works everywhere. So it's the same thing not only for finding apps, but even if you're trying to find a system setting. I mean, he could just as easily go on the search and click settings and look for, well, how do I do an update, or how do I find this, or how do I find the character map? And so it's search for everything. So everyone's going to get used to it, like you said, Windows key or whatever it's going to be to get to that search. So whether in the context of an app or picking and choosing those other things, this is a very, very cool thing, and you probably really want your app to use this.
Absolutely. There's got to be some way in which your app is searchable. There's something that you can expose through there. On your point, let me type the word mouse. I could be searching for the mouse penny guide in the store, but I also could be looking for mouse settings on my computer.
There you go. Yeah.
And I jumped immediately from one to another.
Exactly.
Remember we were talking about that full usage scenario that people are going to go
Yes.
through? This is part of it, and you want to implement search so that your user is going through your app on that usage scenario. Now, the app that you currently have open, let's be in the store. Here I am in the store. When I'm on an app, say your app, and I hit WinQ, or I slide the charms bar out. Let me go ahead and simulate that by hitting WinC. I slide the charms bar out, slime the charge bar.
You slimed it, yeah.
Slime the charge bar. I click on search, and by default, I'm searching the app that is currently active.
Right.
And that app is responsible for making the suggestions. Okay? So now when I type mouse, the store app is responsible for giving me search suggestions for the word mouse.
Yeah, so I love that you did that because, someone said, oh, so a search basically Control F or find, and no, it's so much more than that. It's about
Right.
a really deep search in an integrated way to relate with that experience in the operating system.
Yeah. There still is the concept of find if you're on like a web page, for instance. Find is finding something on the page you're on.
Right.
Search is always search.
Yes.
Yep. So do you think we should actually go ahead and write this?
Code?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Code. Let's do some code. Yay. We have unanimous consent. Okay, I'm back into Code Show here, and I am going to go to one of the examples. This is one that I actually just brought this into Code Show yesterday. So if you downloaded the Code Show yesterday, you might not see this one. So you might want to make sure you have the latest version or just watch and follow along. So there's now a page called Search in Code Show. And we had the question, we talked about this a little bit about how to add the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all at once. You can see that this is exactly what's been done here. I've added a folder called Search, and it's got its CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. They're all there. Now, if you hit Control-Alt-L, that activates the Solution Explorer. And if you highlight all three of those files and hit Enter, it opens all three of those files. And if you want to look in your Solution Explorer for all of the files that have the word search in them, which is a little bit ironic, I'm searching for search, I hit Control semicolon, I type the word search, and my Solution Explorer it narrows it down to just search.
That was Control semicolon.
Control semicolon to activate this. There's a lot of different ways to search in Visual Studio. Control semicolon, Control comma actually is a navigation, so I can go right to search.css by using navigate to. I can also go search for settings. So if, for instance, I want to turn on my line numbers, I can search for a setting in Visual Studio, and there I'm turning on my line numbers. Voila. Lots of different ways to search. Okay, that was off topic. That was a fun little tangent. Okay, so what I want to do is, in Code Show, this is an interesting example because Code Show already has search capabilities, right? If I'm looking for something about a grid, I type in grid. I'm on Code Show, so this is the default app. I submit grid search, and it finds the grid and hero images. They're both grid related. So it found those. Now that search is already implemented. So in my search example, I'm going to implement the ready, and I'm also going to implement the unload. What I'm doing here is I'm saving the existing search functionality and then restoring that existing search functionality so you don't lose it, all right? Because for every different view in your app, you could implement search in a different way. If they're in some detail of your app, so on some entity, you might choose for search to do something, like search in that entity for some more detailed information. But if they're on the hub, then you might want it to search for something else, and that's completely possible. So let's look at how we search here. This is really just 3 steps. Here's step 1, grab the search pane. Okay? Step 1 is grab a reference to the search pane. Windows, we know we're in the WinRT namespace. If you see Windows dot, Windows.applicationModel.search.searchPane.get for current view. Okay? You know that's a method because it ends with a football and it starts with a lowercase g. So this gives us access to the search pane. Step 2, I implement the ignore everything in between here. I implement the on query submitted. That's all I really have to do to implement search. I grab the search pane. Step 2, I implement the on query submitted. The rest of it's optional because it has to do with suggestions. We'll see that in a second. But on query submitted means when the user searches for something and hits go or enter or whatever, this is what I want to happen. And so in my document, I'm saying whenever the user does that, I want to look for the .search, so I'm namespace to this page. I could go ahead and use my Q function here. I want to search for the H2 on this page and set its inner text to whatever it is that the user searched for. Let's take a look. Let's go to the search example. You should have this if you have the latest version. Here I am. It just says content goes here, nothing special. Right. I'm going to hit WinC and hit search. That's the same as hitting WinQ, by the way, but I wanted to show you the charm. Now you see that I've got a couple of suggestions already. I haven't created those suggestions. Those are there because I've searched for those before recently. So both things are shown in this as suggestions. But I want to search for blue whale. Now ignore the suggestions that were made there. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and you can see that that search term was passed in to my application. Okay?
I get it.
Now the next step, the next thing that we might want to do when we're implementing search is we want to make some suggestions. Now pay attention to this code right here. When I'm building this search pane, I need to subscribe to the on suggestions requested. Now this is an event that fires, for instance, whenever a user types a letter. I typed B, suggestions are requested. L, suggestions are requested. U, same thing. And every time those suggestions are requested, your app has the opportunity to make suggestions. And here's what it does. Here's how it does that. In this case, I'm jumping into the arguments that were passed into this event, looking at the request, looking at the search suggestion collection, and I'm adding orange. Okay? So I am unconditionally adding orange, banana, and apple. We're back to the fruit, sorry.
Oh, man.
Should I ask you for a fourth fruit here?
Oh, my goodness, cherry.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah, I learned.
Yeah, could we get a full-on applause on that one?
Yeah, thanks.
So we've got orange, banana, and apple being suggested unconditionally. So this is a little bit of a silly case, but this is why when I went to, let me go back to my running app. When I went to WinQ and I typed blue whale, it said, how about orange? No, that doesn't match at all. See, you as the developer are responsible for looking at what it is that the users suggested and matching that up and filtering out that list. So if you actually just go look in the code at the way that I implemented search on default.js, you'll find that under the JS folder, default.js. And if you look down at the under the add search contract, you'll see the on suggestions requested. You can see how I added that and how I'm actually adding suggestions for all of those tags, but filtering it by what the user is typing. Okay?
Sweet.
That should get you there. Now, so you can make suggestions, but you can also ask Windows for a little bit of help with your suggestions. So I'm going to comment out the apple, orange, banana suggestions, and I'm going to go uncomment these ones. Now here's what we're doing for these. We are grabbing access to this local content suggestion settings, and then we're appending the Windows Storage Known Folders Music Library. Okay? This is telling Windows, I want you to help me help the user by giving them suggestions based on their music library. Now your code is accessing their music library now, so you're going to have to declare the capability. Let me show you that real quick. I'm going to have to go to my AppX manifest, open this up, go to the capabilities tag, and I'm going to have to declare that I'm going to be requesting access to the music library. It's required. And the user has the opportunity to say, no, 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 I don't want this app to be able to see my music, and then Windows won't allow it. So I'm asking for some help with the music library. Let's go ahead and run this again and see what the behavior is from my app. Did you notice that I reran this app and I landed on the same page I was at?
I did.
We're going to talk about that a bit later, but Windows is storing some state for us, just remembering what page we were on and then re-executing a navigation to that page when we get back to it.
Excellent.
That's pretty helpful.
Yes.
So we're on the search page. I go to search and I start typing blue, and now I get, oh, on this computer I don't have any music. There we go. That'll work. It's finding bar basic bind. Oh, it's finding the search from the app. Now, what would happen there if I had any music on this computer is I would search for something like, I like the Avett Brothers. I would search for Avett, and it would find the Avett Brothers from my music library.
Yes.
And then simply pass that as a term into your app
Sure.
whenever you click on it. So
Very nice.
that's the search. All right. If you guys have any questions about search, feel free to use that chat, and we'll answer them either sooner or later. But let's go ahead and move on from search to share. This is the section on share. Now, there's two sides to sharing. Search, there's really just the one side. You're searching. But with sharing, you're sharing things, and other people are sharing things with you. So we call it the share source and the share target. And you can implement one or the other or both. It's good to implement both. What happens if, for instance, a user shares text with your app? What might you do there? Well, it depends. You might store it. You might, have some content on it. You never know what you're going to do with a share. But if you can, if there's something that makes sense, then you should implement it. So the thing about sharing is that this is really an easy way to get an app that users love, because users love to share. I mean, if you make an app that is in any way social or relational or implements sharing, you're at least going to get all the teenage girls downloading the app, right? Because they're loving the chattering, they're loving the relationship. That's the way they're wired. So they're definitely gonna buy your app. This is definitely a part of Win as One. You're going to be sharing with other apps, they're going to be sharing with other apps, and you're going to be creating that usage scenario that I talked about. Now, when you're sharing, there are 6 different types that you can share. And then there's a 7th type that is custom. Okay, so it's really pretty wide open what it is that you can share, but it's nice that there's some structure to it too, because then your user comes to expect, your apps have a language that they can talk. Your receiving app has something that it can expect. And yeah, if you can, implement share target. So let's go ahead and look at sharing. Now, sharing is implemented in the Code Show project, and you can go to I'm going to close down any running pages there, and I'm going to go to share. The share HTML is super simple, doesn't do too much. Most of this is going to happen in the JS. Now, notice here that this is not a really complicated thing. This is very little code. This is the code here to do a basic share. And what we're doing is we're again jumping into the WinRT namespace, windows.applicationmodel.data transfer to data transfer manager. Now, this data transfer manager is a component of Windows that handles, it kind of is the broker for sharing between apps. So one app is, when you hook up to the data transfer manager, your app is kind of telling Windows, I'm waiting for anybody to ask me to share. Look for me to be sharing. And so then when you go ahead and share, the data transfer manager goes and looks for other apps that are capable of receiving the share type that you are sharing out, and it notifies your app of those other apps that you can share with. So it acts as the broker in between you and the possible share targets. So I'm jumping onto that, and I'm getting it for the current view, and then I'm hooking on to this onDataRequested event. So I'm implementing the onDataRequested event. So this is going to fire whenever the user requests that they want to share while they're in my app. And in this case, I'm just looking up the text box that I have on my share demo that's called input text, getting its value, and then I'm grabbing the eRequest data, which comes to me in the event arguments. I'm setting one of the properties. I'm setting the title property specifically. And I'm checking to make sure that the content isn't more than 40 pixels, because I don't want to set a really long title, because it should be limited. I'll show you where this implements. And if it is longer, then I'm truncating it and putting a little ellipse at the end.
So to be clear, this is if someone's trying to share something with your app?
This is if my app is trying to share out.
Without, okay.
Yeah, and it'll be clear when I run it.
Okay.
So I'm setting the title of my share here, and then I am setting the text. Now this method indicates that I'm choosing one of those 6 types, the text type, the basic text type. Now that doesn't mean that I can't set other ones also. I could also set, for instance, set HTML format, and I could go ahead and set 2 different things and share those both at the exact same time. I'm really just shoving all the things I want to share into this data property, which stands for, this is the data package that's going to go to the receiving app. Okay?
Cool.
So I'm going to share out text. Let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to go to the share example. Share. Here I am. Here's some plain text, excuse me. And the plain text I want to use is, again, I'm stuck on blue whales. Biggest animal in the whole world. I'm going to share it. So I'm going to hit Win-H. That's the shortcut for share. I can also just slide open my charms and hit share. Okay, so 2 different ways to share.
2 different ways, right.
Yep. And the only app on this computer right now capable of receiving text is the Mail app.
Cool.
That's it.
But you can actually share that text with that Mail app.
Now, my app has no idea about the Mail app. Because this is going through a Windows 8 contract, all I know is I share text. And all the Mail app knows is I receive text.
So the user's really in control of what gets shared to whatever's available.
Yeah.
That's great.
If, for instance, I'm a big user of Facebook, I can download the Facebook app. It inevitably is going to be able to receive share. And so I'm going to share my text, and it's going to go to Facebook. And the authors of the Facebook app then get to define what does it mean for us to receive text and share it. Probably it looks like a wall post, or who knows, right? Or it looks like a little UI that gives the user the choice of what that looks like.
Exactly.
Let's see what happens when we choose the Mail app.
I want to see what happens, yes.
I'm going to choose the Mail app, and the Mail app is now running. Okay, but it's running in it's not running full screen. It's running with a flyout here in our app. Now it's asking me to set up my Microsoft account. I don't have that set up right now, but it's going to give me a UI, and it's going to take whatever it is that I shared, and it's going to drop it in there. Actually, let me go ahead and see if I can just set this up real quick, because that would be a much better experience. Everybody close your eyes. Okay, there we go.
Woo!
So I shared out Blue Whale. It used Blue Whale for the subject, and it also dropped Blue Whale into the body.
Nice.
Now that was just plain text, but we could have shared HTML or whatever.
Sure.
I choose who I want to send this to. Michael Palermo at glee.com. Isn't that?
Oh, my land.
Oh, sorry. No, that's not your. Oh, sorry. So I'm sharing something with an app that I have absolutely no visibility to. The beauty of this is that another app is going to be created that is, the next biggest social app in the world. All of a sudden, your app can already share with it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to roll your version or anything.
That is so great. As a developer, think about how we don't have to think about all these APIs we have to learn. Every time there's a new whatever it is that we have to now integrate that code into our code. I love the fact that we can just share and say, let the user be in control, and we don't even have to know what it is that they're sharing with.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Now I've got a sample pack here that I am looking for real quick. Why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about your experience with Share so far while I look for this?
Well, I think that the main thing, and I think of it from a pain point perspective, and that is if I wanted to integrate with a Twitter, or if I wanted to share something out or tweet something, or like you said with the social media, or even if it's just like wanting to find a picture and saying, I would really like to share that with my favorite photo sharing or photo storage, whether it's Flickr or some other thing like that. I just love the idea that we can get into the business of what our app is good at. And our app is good at whatever it is that we receive or let out, but we don't have to worry about, well, how am I going to sync in with that latest thing? And I just feel like that's such a win for developers right now. And that's why contracts are such a key feature, and that's because you can have those great integration stories and not have to worry about all the details. Just worry about what you're good at getting or good at sending.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, hi there. It is great to be back. We're going to be starting here now in Module 4 of this Day 2 Jumpstart. Very excited here about this topic, UI and controls. We're going to be showing a lot of cool things that you're probably going to have in your apps when you're developing. And this is a look at where we have been and with regard to our agenda for the day. We've already talked about design, develop, and working with contracts. Now it's going to be about UI and controls. And specifically, we're going to mostly be in code for this whole module, but we're going to look at the WinJS controls, and we're going to then address the app bar uniquely because it's like a first-class citizen as far as controls are concerned, because it's going to be used in a similar way throughout the operating system and other apps. And then we're going to talk about a very important thing, which will provide a little clarity on a little battle we had earlier, and that is on handling view state changes, what happens in snap and fill, and so forth. So let's start, though, by going back to the agenda and looking at what we mean when we're saying WinJS controls. You know, when you think of controls, sometimes in other environments you think of like a binary, or you think of some tangible thing that you're putting somewhere. And yet with WinJS controls, what we're really talking about is usually typically taking a div and applying this attribute, the data-win-control attribute to it, and then specifying what it is that we're the name of the control, and then potentially some options to set on that control, which means that there's nothing that's going in your HTML that's actually a violation of any HTML. I mean, it's really good. So, I mean, I think that's really a fascinating thing that has happened, is that we're creating pure HTML and yet adding all this dynamic behavior through the magic of these WinJS controls and using these data-win control attributes. So, without any further delay, I would like to now go ahead and demo some of these controls. We're just going to have a heyday going with various ones, and I'm going to start right now with one of the simplest ones that can be implemented. And I'll go over into the home page. And right now, in fact, let me go ahead and run this application first so we can see what's on the screen. So we're going to see what's going to be different. I'll go ahead and execute. And this is on the home page right now. All I have is a button and the Jumpstart Demos title. So not very exciting, but we're going to add something to it that's a little interactive. Yeah. So let me go back and let's do this here. Right after the button. In fact, maybe I'll even create a div as a container for it. I'm going to go over into the toolbox. So I'm going to stop the execution here. And for the sake of simple, imagine I'm a really fast typer here. And shazam! We have ourselves a new control. This control is called WinJS.UI.rating in terms of its type, and the ID, I call it rater. Now, what I want to do is let you see what would happen if I were typing this attribute. I can go in now and see, and I'll type that again so you can see the list. I'm getting IntelliSense here.
That's helpful.
That is very helpful. So when you want to know what's available, you can go ahead and scroll down this IntelliSense-based list and find out what all the different controls are. So I really like that we can see all the different things, and of course we're going to be touching on quite a few of those. But I will go back to what I had done, and that is the rating. Now the rating just happens to have something called a max rating, which means when you want to do a rating for anything, what typically is it that you want to rate between? Boy, I tell you what, there's some fundamental arguments that people might have as far as, in fact, I think it's a heated debate sometimes. Do you rate between 1 and 5? Do you rate between, 1 and 7 or 1 and 10 or whatever the case is? What do you feel like, Mr. Jeremy, I should put for this maximum rating? Meaning, what is the scale of our rating going to be?
5. 5's the global standard,
Oh,
right?
okay, 5. So be it. So I'm going to put 5 in there. And now that I have that done, I'll go ahead and run it. Now, I think that's kind of cool to know that that was pretty much all I had to do. In fact, adding the data-win-options was not even required. I mean, that's only if I wanted to affect the setting. So let's see what this is going to look like.
I wonder if we could determine, based on the default value of the max ratings property, what is the global standard for...
Aha, yeah, touche. Yeah, we both know the answer to that. But alas, we will take a look, and look at that. I have 5 stars just waiting for me to immerse into that content. Now, if I go into, whoops, let me escape back out of there. Let me go back into the app. If I go into this and just start hovering over these stars, notice I get tooltips that let me know what the rating is. And as I progressively move across, I'm also seeing that it is hovering and giving that, okay, if you go here, you're looking like 4. Hopefully this is a 5-star demo, so I'll go ahead and click there, and it preserved that setting or that rating. Of course, I can access that programmatically, but the reason why I wanted to start with the rating as an example is because it can really be, in this example, that simple. Just declaratively put it on the page and use it. And now that I gave it an ID of rater, I can go into my code and I can start extracting from that rating exactly what it is that I need. What did they select? There's other options with the rating where if you wanted to display that rating to the user and show what the average rating has been so far based on the statistical data you've received, you could do that. So you can have a lot of fun with this. Another thing that you could do with the rating that is really nice in terms of styling is Jeremy showed earlier that you could go into the CSS and start to see all the things related to the rating, and you can override or change or provide your own scenarios for what you would want. Maybe you don't like the color scheme that was automatically provided. So you can introduce your own styles there for that.
Can I change it from a star to some completely different icon?
You could, even though it's maintained as a star in the rating. I mean, that's how it's called in some of the. But of course, you're going to be able to go in there and do whatever it is that you want to do to make that appropriate for your use in the application. So that was one, and just to show again maybe the power of the options here. Let's assume we're going to scale. You know, some organizations feel like you have to have a 10 scale. You know, so just to see how that would work, we'll go ahead and refresh the app, and we can see, of course, that it applied. Also, all those tooltips that are appearing, those are there by default, but we can affect those and modify those in our code as well, so they can be whatever we want them to say. So that is one. Now, I would love to see some other examples, and I think you have something waiting that might be just a little bit more, require a little more complexity than just the rating control.
Maybe just a little bit more. Yeah, let's go ahead and switch over to mine. I'm going to show you a demo that is in Code Show, so you guys are able to jump on this one. If you go to the pages and look for Progress Bar, you'll find it. Progress Bar, like any other page, is a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I'm going to show you all 3 so you can see what a control consists of entirely. Just like Michael said, a progress control or any other control is going to usually consist of a div with a data-win-control, right? Well, the way that Microsoft implemented the web platform, I really, really love, because if a control existed already in HTML5, we didn't go and overwrite it with our own. We just jumped on board the HTML5 standard, and if there wasn't an HTML5 control, like for instance for rating, then we went ahead and implemented it using the standards-based data-win-control.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, so the progress bar is an example of a control that already exists in Windows 8. It already exists, I'm sorry, in HTML5.
Sure.
You know that there are buttons already, there are input controls, there are a number of controls that already exist, and we don't want to override those. So progress exists in HTML5 as simply progress. So there's no proprietary any way of decorating this to turn this into a progress. You just say progress, and it automatically knows. But there are Windows 8 characteristic ways of making this progress bar look like a Windows 8 characteristic. Let me just go ahead and show you this example as it's executing in CodeShow. If you haven't seen it already on your own, you can go to Progress Bar, and you'll see that there are two types of progress bars, indeterminate and determinate. We're always frustrated by the indeterminate ones because they tell us that the system is doing something, but give us absolutely no indication of how long it's going to take. Hopefully we don't have to see very much of these in an asynchronous programming environment like Windows RT, but sometimes it's true that the system doesn't know how long it's going to take. Maybe it's a network call, and you don't know how long it's going to take to come back from that network call.
Right.
And so you need an indeterminate one. Now this first one, the bar, did you see how that was implemented? Just like this. That's it. Okay? That's turning that progress bar into that flying series of dots that says I'm working on something, but I'm not going to be able to tell you how far along I am on it.
And here I thought the rating would even be simpler.
No.
You beat me there.
Absolutely.
That's even simpler.
That's simpler. Now, how does it know that I want it to be an indeterminate? It knows because for a determinate, you're going to have to specify some values or maximum values. And if you've specified values, then it says, well, he must know how long this is going to take. So I can render that as a determinate. But let's look at a couple of other ways that we can render the indeterminate progress bars.
Cool.
If I want a ring, or if I want a ring with some text, all I have to do is add a class to that. I want this to be a WinRing progress bar. Nice. Now suddenly we have a rotating ring. It's the time when you would want to use a ring is when you don't have as much space. You know, you want it to render smaller and have those little flying dots chase themselves. And then we can add some text to it with the ring with text. And notice that that ring with text actually takes progress ring text for a label, and then that label wraps around, here's the end of the label, so that label wraps around that progress bar. So it's kind of interesting the way that one is formed. Now for the determinate bar, like I mentioned, a determinate bar is determined by a progress indicator that has values, that has a max on it. So if you specify that currently this progress bar has a maximum of 100, but currently its value is 0, then it's going to render a bar that looks like this. This is an empty progress bar that's not making any progress yet.
Right.
But if I click Advance, I can advance it somewhere.
Whoa.
Now do you notice that it's using a transition here under the hood? So
because it's so graceful.
It's so graceful.
I like it.
It's sliding from one value to another, not just jumping.
Sure.
So I'm advancing, and then I can reset, and when I reset, watch it animate.
That's fluid.
Yeah, very fluid. It's fast and fluid. So let's look at how we implemented that. As far as the HTML, all we have is the progress bar. We have a button that I've given the name Advance, and a button that I've given the name Reset. So this is HTML structure as it should be. All it is the structure. Progress bar, button, button. I'm just defining them.
Right.
But if I switch over to my CSS, now I have an opportunity to style things. Now the only thing that I'm styling is for this, in the determinate section, I want the button to have a margin around it, all buttons, to have a margin around them of 5 pixels. That's what separates these buttons by 10 pixels. So that's the only thing I did to style those. Otherwise, those look the way they do because that's the way WinJS, the UI Lite CSS file that WinJS gave us, styled those things for us. So now let's look at the progressbar.js. In our page, in our ready function, we are doing the following. That means that this is going to execute whenever we've navigated to this page and the DOM has been loaded and is ready. That's why we use the word ready there. Okay?
I see.
You noticed in another demo, I'm not sure if I called it out explicitly, there's another function here called unload. And you can specify a function for what happens whenever the user navigates away from your page.
Okay.
But we'll skip that for now. So in the ready, I'm going to grab a reference to the progress bar. This is namespacing it. I'm talking about the progress bar page, the determinate section that I have it in, and I'm interested in the progress indicator there. There's only one. And then I want to do something with both of my buttons, Advance and Reset. I want to set their click events in the advance, all I do is I grab that progress bar that I already made up here, and I up its value by increasing it by 10%.
Ah.
I multiply its max by 0.1 to get what 10% of our progress bar is, and I increase that by 10%. So if this progress bar were dynamically changed to have a max of, say, 500 instead of 100, it would still advance 10% of it because of the way I've done that math.
That's great.
And then to reset it, all I do is simply change that value. Now notice that I don't have to worry about my transitions and my animations in my code now. All I'm doing is changing those values, and because those transitions have already been defined, those happen for me. I can just be free to think about my code, think about my logic, my flow.
That's great.
And the rest of the animations and the graceful animations are going to happen for me. So that's the progress bar. You've seen it first here.
That's very
What else
good.
do we want to show?
Well, from my understanding, there's a few controls that are probably pretty important for developers to use. There's going to be examples I can think of, like list views. There's well, just
How about a view box?
you know what? That would be fantastic.
Let's do a view box.
Let's do the view box.
That's a pretty common one. Actually, there are some scenarios that pretty much just demand a view box.
What would that be?
Well, let's say you're making a checkers game. If you're making a checkers game, of course, you're going to have a grid of squares, and sometimes the user is going to rotate their tablet. They still want to play checkers. And sometimes they're going to snap their tablet, and sometimes it's going to be fill, and sometimes it's going to be full. And when do you suppose that I want my checker squares to be square, and when do I want them to be rectangular?
I don't think you would.
It's nonsensical, isn't it?
It seems that way.
Yeah,
yes.
we always want our checkerboard to be the same
There you go.
proportions.
Right.
We basically want to take whatever it is that we've created for our checkers board, and we want it to always look like that, but we want it to snap up and snap down in size, in scale, so that it fits in its parent container really well.
That's
It's a
cool.
very common scenario. So if you go back to the demos in Code Show, I'm sure I'm using this a lot. If you go back to the demos and you go to the view box, you see just some little layout that I made. The
Okay.
Windows logo and some lorem ipsum
Sure.
text. Now, if I jump back to Visual Studio and instead of just hitting Control F5 to launch Code Show, if I hit F5, then I launch Code Show with debugging turned on. It's the same thing. I'm still at the view box. It navigated me back to that. But back in Visual Studio, I'm attached to that environment. I'm attached to that process, and I can debug that app.
Okay.
And I also have access to this DOM Explorer. And this DOM Explorer is incredibly helpful because this has a live connection with that app as it's running.
Cool.
And I can even do this, select element, which flips me back to the app and then gives me a kind of a browser developer tools type experience in selecting some element on that page.
Nice.
In which case it will take me to that element.
That's cool.
So here it's taken me to the element, and here it is, my view box.
View box.
Now, this view box is a data win control. Let's go look at the code itself for that. So we'll look up the view box example. We'll open all three of those. And let's look at the viewbox.html. Here is my image and my paragraph. This is that long lorem ipsum thing. They're inside of a div, and the div is inside of my viewbox control. Notice, like you said, not all controls need to have their data win options. You
Right.
can use them or not. This one just has data win control, and it's a Win.js viewbox. Now this viewbox, here's the thing with the viewbox. The viewbox takes one and only one child. You can't give it 2 children, or 10 children, or 100 children. It only knows how to do something with one child.
I see.
Now, that's not really a limitation, because if you have 10 children, you just wrap them in a div, and now suddenly you have one child, right?
Sure.
Yeah. But the viewbox is expecting it to have one and only one child. So you can see that I've got an image and a paragraph. That's 2. So I've wrapped those in a div. Now the viewbox has one child.
Right.
And let's go look at what it does to that child. So let's look back at our DOM Explorer.
Okay.
We can see our viewbox. Here's that child that's inside of the viewbox.
Wait a minute. Did you have all that stuff on your div?
I really don't think I did.
I didn't think so.
I definitely didn't. It's injected that into there. It's injected an inline style, and it said that I want to do a transform, or originating at the top left, and I want to translate this element. That means move it somewhat.
Right.
And I also want to scale it. Look at what it's scaled it to, 2.4 almost.
Wow.
So it has scaled this up to fit the screen. That means that if you just drop a control in a view box, it really doesn't matter what size it is. The view box itself is going to take up, it's going to expand as much as it can, and then it's going to take its one child and scale it up to fit. So if you dropped a checkerboard inside of a view box, inside full mode, it's going to scale it up until it reaches the limiting height, and that's how big it's going to be. And it's going to do that by applying a transform and a scale.
That is cool.
So let's actually snap this. Boom.
Whoa.
Did you see what happened there?
I did. I can barely see it now.
Our content, let's zoom into that. Actually, I, over the break, installed, I installed Zoom It. Nice. But it's actually a little bit goofy. This is a double snap.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just look at it for what it is. The view box is now snapped.
Right.
The contents look exactly like they did. They didn't get laid out again. They didn't get re-rendered.
Right.
They just got scaled. And if you look over here at our DOM Explorer, do you see anything different about our scale?
Oh, yeah, the scale went down.
Yeah. It ended up determining that it had to scale that down in order to fit. So that view box is tremendously helpful if you're working on something like a checker game or any other kind of game where you want to keep your proportions.
So let's see what would happen if you put that into a fill mode, just by kind of dragging that little thing over across. Yeah. Okay, so it just kind of scales to whatever it can.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yep. And if you really want to test this, open it in the simulator, try it out on a 27-inch screen or a 10.6-inch screen, whatever you want.
That's fantastic.
Whatever you want to throw at it, it'll handle it.
Very good.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so I think it's important to maybe connect that with something that we were talking about earlier today, and that was one of the project template types. And that is, what do you perceive that connection might be between this and one of those project template types?
How about fixed layout?
Fixed layout. Kind of seems interesting, right? Fixed layout for something that dynamically scales. It depends on how you want to look at it, but it's basically that's the magic behind the whole fixed layout project template is it automatically provides one of those for you.
Yeah. I'll tell you what you don't want to do is you don't want to provide a layout that doesn't look right in every view. If it's a game, then obviously when you try to snap that game, it may not even be playable, but you can handle that correctly. If there's just absolutely no way to make it work, there are some tricks. We'll get to that in a second. But if you have an app that's not a checkers game, it's more like some dynamic content, like maybe the tiles that are showing up in Code Show, don't use ViewBox and try to scale everything.
Right.
Just design your app with flexboxes, grids, and the next thing we're going to talk about, which is list view, and make your app dynamic. Make it expand to the amount of room that the user has.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah. Okay, ready for a list view?
This one's a biggie.
This is a mammoth topic.
I mean, I would say it's probably the #1 used control that I've used so far. I don't know about you, but
I use body maybe more.
Oh, okay. So when we're talking about some of these new features, I think it's list view that's used quite a bit.
It is. It's used a ton.
Sure.
Okay, so let's take a look. Once again, luckily this one is implemented in Code Show, so you guys can go look at this as well. I have been consolidating some of the things in here, so there are actually 2 tiles that speak to the list view.
Okay.
And I think I'll consolidate those at some point. So if you find it consolidated in the future, don't be surprised. But we have list views, and then we have hero images. We're going to look at both of those right now. They're both list views, so I'm going to move hero images in.
Great.
Let's look at list views first.
So what is a list view?
It's a kind of like a view that lists things.
I wasn't expecting that.
So much clearer now.
Yeah,
thank you.
Totally clear. It actually does have a little bit of a dual persona, though, because if you have any experience with XAML and C#, you might know that there's a list view in XAML, and there's also a grid view. And in that environment, a developer has to choose whether he, in general, wants to be laid out horizontally or vertically, and he chooses list view or grid view. But in the HTML world, there's really just the one, and it handles both cases.
Right.
Yeah. So what you're looking at now is a demo that shows 2 different versions of the list view, to show off a couple of its features. There really is so much about the list view that I expect this demo to really grow. So if you sign up for the source control on CodePlex and you get updates on CodeShow, then those examples will come in for you. But
Cool.
what this one has done is it has brought in the data. I've been able to bind to data, and it's brought in the data elements into this list, and it's laid it out like this. It might look like remember the Flexbox, how we were flowing?
Yeah.
And remember how the grid is good at making squares?
Yes.
It might look like that, but it's not actually implemented by using either of those.
Okay.
It's actually implemented in a really fancy, advanced way that gives us a whole lot of control. One of the types of control that we get over this control is the ability, for instance, to just right-click on something and select it. In a Flexbox, you don't get the ability inherently to just right-click on something and select it.
So you didn't do any code to make that work?
Absolutely. None
That's
at all.
cool.
None at all. So we're going to see the really simple code that it takes to take some data and populate a list view like this.
Cool.
All right, let's do it. So we are back to CodeShow. I'm going to hit Shift F5 to turn off debug mode. And then I'm going to close down whatever I have open, hit Control semicolon to filter this by list view. Bada boom. There's my list view. Now let's look at the HTML first. Everybody close your eyes. Don't look at that. Here's the HTML. In the HTML, here's what I have. I have a simple example here, and then ignore everything after that. This is the only code that I have, the only HTML markup that I have for that first example, the simple
I see
list
what
view.
you're saying.
Yeah, there was a grouped one off to the right. Don't pay no attention to the man behind
You
this
can
curtain.
collapse that, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Whew. I feel much better.
Good.
Let me just go on a collapse frenzy here. Just get stuff
Great.
out of your way you don't need. There we go. All right. We're only looking at the simple example. Now, in this simple example, I have a list view. It has a data win control of WinJS UI list view. Now, if you have a list view, you're going to be rendering some content in it. And if you're rendering some content in it, you're going to want to control how that content shows up.
Sure.
And that takes a template. So we use another control called the WinJS binding template. You're getting 2 for the price of 1 in this demo.
Wow.
Because I'm showing you the list view and the template that controls what the individual items look like inside.
Yeah, that's strange. So just declaring the template after the list view applies it?
It doesn't.
Oh.
No. We have a list view and we have a template, but behind the scenes we're going to have to tie those together.
I see.
Yeah. But let's take a glance at this template. We've got a div with an image and another div. And look at this crazy syntax. Data.win.bind. We haven't seen that yet.
Nope.
This is a binding statement. This acts kind of like Knockout.js or something like that, where it's actually allowing us to determine that the source attribute, remember that images have a source attribute,
they
right?
do.
But instead of specifying that, I get to tell this binding statement that I want that to come from the image URL.
Sweet.
And I want the inner text of this div to come from the name data, the name property of my bound data.
Does this also follow some rule that there can only be one container inside of that template?
No, not necessarily.
Whoa.
Yeah, you could put other things inside here. I've wrapped these into divs so that I have a little bit of control over the whole thing, but not necessarily.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go look at the JavaScript finally. And here's what we are working with. This is in the ready. So in the ready, we're going to declare an array. Instead of fetching this data from a service online or anything like that, we're just doing it locally, just to keep it simple for this example. So I'm declaring a list of 17 different attractions in Kawaii. I believe we've looked at these already. And for each one, they're an object. You can see by the curly braces. We call these mustaches.
Gotcha.
That's a left mustache, and it's succeeded by a right mustache. And inside the mustaches, we have properties. So each of these attractions has a name, a category, and actually if I hit this, it breaks these down for me, a location, an image URL, and finally a description. Description. So these are the properties of our attraction, okay? And this is a whole list of all those all of those attractions. Now let's go down to our code. Make myself a little variable called LV that is nothing right now. Its value would be null. Now, in the simple script, I'm going to create for myself something called simple list, and I want that to be a new WinJS binding list. Now, this is a object in WinJS that WinJS gives us that acts a little bit like an array.
Okay.
But the big advantage that it has over an array is that it's live. It's observable, if you will.
Oh.
So when we add things to it or remove things from it, it fires the right events so that our UI can respond to that.
I see. So this is not a visual control.
No.
This is something behind the scenes that our list view is going to use.
Absolutely. It's
Okay.
like a data source.
Okay.
And we can instantiate that by passing it in an array. And if we pass in those attractions, then by default, our simple list is going to contain a dynamic or observable list of attractions.
Cool.
That's something that we can bind our list to. So let's grab let's set our LV to that actual list view control. Notice that I have to use this WinControl
Oh.
property. This says fetch the DOM element, but now I'm not interested in the DOM element for this to get this list view. I'm interested in the actual strong typed list view.
Oh.
So you can select the DOM element and then say WinControl, and that'll return for you the real list.
Because it was actually a div,
Yeah, it was a div.
but by calling WinControl, we're kind of getting what we really want out of it.
Exactly.
I see.
That's exactly right. Now there's only two things we need to do. We need to set that list view's data source, and we set it to our little list, and we have to set it to the data source of that list.
Okay.
And the second thing we need to do is we need to set the item template. And this is just expecting a DOM element, so I can just select that item template that we made.
Gotcha. So again, the placement of that particular template on your markup wasn't really anything to do with associating it with it. It was that line of code you just showed
Yep.
that said, hey, that's how you can do it.
Yep. In fact, I could cut this out and paste it anywhere else I wanted in this document. As long
Cool.
as that selector will find it, then it'll tie up correctly.
Okay.
All right. So again, we're ignoring all of this for now. We're just looking at this simple case. And remember, this is stored for eternity in code show. So when you forget how this works, because it takes me about 5 times doing something
Right.
before I remember, now I can write it in my sleep.
Hey,
But
can you remind me what Q is again? I keep forgetting.
yeah, thank you. That's a good thing to refresh people's memories anyway, because they may not have been here yesterday. Q is a shortcut for query selector and query selector all. It's a function that I made that aggregates the two, and
Okay.
it doesn't care whether
So-
there's one or many.
Custom function you wrote that just is abbreviating some
Yep.
stuff. Okay.
And you could go look at that in ocho.js, and you can decide to use it, or you can decide to use the standard syntax.
Oh, okay. That
Yep.
makes sense.
But mine is about 18 characters shorter. Okay, so we've done these 4 lines of code after, these don't count. We've done these 4 lines of
Sure.
code, and we have hopefully populated our list view. Well, we know we have because we already saw it, but
Right.
we've populated our list view with all of these attractions. Now, the URLs are just links to the image out on the web. That's fine. And let's go ahead and take a look at this again.
Well, welcome back. Hopefully you're having a great time. We have just been excited getting into all this code, and there's still so many features left to talk about. And I mean, when I'm thinking about what we've done up to this point, we started off with design. We worked all the way through, talked about some contracts, talked about how to get started. And now we're getting to a module that's going to help us to understand more about interactions. And these interactions are not like its counterpart over on the left side where we said DOM interactions. That was programmatic within, yesterday. These kind of interactions are interactions that are going to be engaging with the user and the application, or the application and the operating system, or the user and the application with external things. So there's so many interactions going on, we just decided to use the word interaction. So it's kind of a potpourri of stuff that is going to precede one of the coolest modules, which is going to end the day with data access, because that's always a biggie. But let's go ahead and get started and see what our agenda is going to look like. So we're going to begin with a brief discussion on authentication and authorization within what's supplied and what you can do. we're going to look at another hot topic, and that is custom inputs and gestures. A brief example of how you can tie those in specifically when we're thinking about touch devices. And then tiles, what they are, and toast notifications, and it might not be what you think it is. It's exactly.
Toast might not be what you think.
It might not be what you think. That's right. So we'll have fun showing all those different things. So let's talk first about authentication and authorization scenarios, what we're referring to specifically in the context of this module. So the first one is credential roaming. Love to give a little brief story on what credential roaming, or like a scenario of what it might mean. Imagine that you have signed in at work and you just logged into a social app or site of some kind that required a password.
At work, you're on a social network?
Okay. Imagine you were at a friend's house, and because I would never do that at work,
No,
right? So imagine you were someplace, and you had signed in with one particular device or computer, and you provided the credentials, and you got that, hey, do you want to save that? Yes, on that machine, right? But then you have a slate, running your Windows 8 operating system that you find when you get home, and you go right to that same app that you were at, and it didn't prompt you for credentials, but you've never actually logged into it on that slate before. So credential roamings give you that ability to say, not only do I want you to save it, but there is a chance for developers to actually preserve that value in a credential vault, which is what it is, and allows that to be synchronized across multiple devices, and makes for a much better user experience. So that's one thing that we're going to, that's part of this context of authentication and authorization scenarios. Another is regarding single sign-on with a Microsoft account. What do you think that means? Single sign-on. Any clues?
Signing on one time.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. To enable a single sign-on scenario means it would be a shame. I think of it this way. It's a shame if here you are within the application, the user's already signed on to the operating system, and they've already signed on with their Microsoft account, and now we're asking them to, once yet again, to sign on again because we might want to access some information regarding, maybe do you want to see your favorite pics, or you want to go see who your contacts are and stuff. So it's like, why are we asking them again?
Yeah, that'd be no good.
It would be no good. So you could do that with the Microsoft account using an SDK, or you could also use what's called the Web Authentication Broker, which gives another way to do this, and also reaches out to other types of authentication places or sources. And then we're going to look also at the authorization via tokens. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. In fact, if you want to, can you demonstrate on your machine a simple authentication demo?
Absolutely. So I'm in Code Show right now, and there's the authentication demo available to you on the front screen there. And when I go into that, it's super basic. You've got the code for you, and I want to point out, let's actually jump over to the code there, because I want to point out that when you downloaded Code Show, you know that you had to go install some SDKs in order for this to work. And one of those was this Live SDK. This Live SDK delivers to you some JavaScript. Everything is prefixed with WL. And it delivers to you that JavaScript so that in your JavaScript you can use this framework by just referring to simple JavaScript functions. Okay, so you have that. Now, in the interface here, when I get to it, right now it's asking me to sign in to Live. This is not the computer that I normally use. This is our presentation computer. And so it's asking me to sign in because I'm actually not signed in with my Microsoft account.
Interesting.
Now, with my personal PC, normally I come to this page, this demo in Code Show, and it says, you're already signed in.
You're already signed in.
But right now, it's prompting me and saying you have to sign in order to authenticate here.
Wow.
Yeah. So if I click on Sign In to Live, it actually renders for me this interface and prompts me for my Microsoft account. Let's just go ahead and do that again real quick. Close your eyes.
So you didn't create that UI right there?
No.
Wow.
Nope, I didn't have to create this. The Windows Live SDK handled the creation of that for me.
Okay.
I save that, and it says you're signed in, and your session has changed. So there's a little trigger there. I'm capturing an event, and I get to run some code in response to an event that anytime my session changes, I get to do something. So if the user logs out or something, I can capture that, and I can react differently in my app because I know that the user's session has changed. I could go check it and see what's the new status of their session. And here I am. I'm signed in. Now let me go ahead and try to sign in again, and it says, you're already signed in.
Okay.
Yep. And let me jump out of here, jump back in, sign in. You're already signed in.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's just a simple example. That's what it looks like in the UI. Let's go look at the code. Control semicolon auth brings me authentication. Let's look at the HTML. Very simple. All I have essentially is a log and a sign in button and then a little bit of explanation of how this works. Notice that when I click on one of these files in the Solution Explorer in Visual Studio 2012, it works differently than it did in 2010. When I click on one of these, it shows me the file, but it doesn't open the file and pollute my tab well.
Oh.
See, so I can click on the HTML and see it, but notice it's rendered over here on the right side of my tab well.
I did not notice that.
And now when I switch, it shows me the JavaScript, but it hasn't kept the HTML in there polluting my tab well. Very, very handy.
That is handy.
Okay, so the JavaScript is where the real magic in this authentication example is happening. And you'll see that we're using this WL. This WL is comes from the Live SDK that was given to us. And if you want really good IntelliSense support in your JavaScript file, if it doesn't detect it already, and I believe in this file it would, but at one point it wasn't, you can see this reference path on the top. You can always drop this / comment in the top of your page, and that will tell Visual Studio, hey, I want you to go look at this file and use that to help me with my IntelliSense down here.
Wow.
So now when I do WL dot, I get good IntelliSense over the WL.
That's very cool.
It normally and usually detects, based on the page and its all the references and stuff, that this page does have that WL in its namespace, but sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes I think it probably wouldn't, just as a little side note, just because it is possible with all of our, containers, you can have, that kind of like that default loading this, and then it could be loading something we might get into later called fragments, and then by the next thing you know, it's like, maybe it just doesn't keep track. So that's a really nice tip trick.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so in the WL, I can initialize. So I'm initializing first, and then I am subscribing to this event, this auth login event. I'm subscribing to the session change event, and then I'm saying whenever the user clicks the button, I want to check the session. And if it's true, if get session is true, if there's a session, then I tell the user, you're already signed in. Otherwise, I want to sign them in. So I say wl.login, and I provide it a scope. Now, this scope is really important. The scope basically means how much do you want to do with the user's information? What all are you asking for here? And to just say wl.signin is to just say, I don't need anything about the user. All I want to do is sign in.
Oh.
And you can request that your app has certain levels of access. That way, you can request only however much access your app needs. So for instance, your app might need to sign the user in and make sure that this is in fact George, like they claim. Maybe it doesn't need to know George's middle name and his phone number and his friends, and and maybe it doesn't need that information. And if you don't need that information, don't just ask for it, because there's a good chance that you're going to have some users that will say, you know what, this app doesn't seem like it needs all this information, and yet it's asking me for it. I don't really trust this app. And so they might not use your app because you're asking for too much.
I see.
Only ask for the scope that you actually need.
That's very good.
Yeah, it's an important concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to think about those. You always have to think about the user. Those usability things, you have to remember that the #1 criterion for a successful app is a happy user, somebody who has a good user experience. So you can't forget about the little things.
Absolutely.
Yep. And so that's really it for this simple authentication example using the Microsoft account. What else can we do?
Well, of course, as we know, when it comes to security items, sometimes it's just not that simple, right? And sometimes it can get far more advanced. And one of the things I learned from my interactions with developers over the years is that everyone thinks that their security is always special, right? It's almost like, well, we're different. Well, everyone says that. Everyone thinks that they're different, right? They always have this unique scenario of some kind that they're saying, well, we map to this. So when we're talking about security, you kind of have to take that in, and it's relevant. Okay, so what are we going to do about that? Well, one of the things that we think would be very beneficial is sometimes you need to take that information, make it relative to your situation. So provide as much as we can, but then let you take it from there and have that great experience in terms of tweaking it to exactly what would map for you. So I would like to show now how you could do that, how you could take advantage of some provisions there that may be complicated, but you can extract it and make it work for you. So let's go ahead and go over into Visual Studio. And inside of Visual Studio, I am going to demonstrate another way to do something that you actually showed earlier. You kind of showed a batch version of what you could do with some samples. I'm going to show how you can get very specific. So I'm going to say File, New, Project. That's going to open up the the New Project dialog box. But we've been like in this mode this whole time. Let's go to one of these particular project types. But in fact, there is yet more. And if we were to choose online instead, and then go over into the samples for JavaScript, what you'll find is that there is a way for you to go into this world, and there's so many different examples that you could say on demand, I want them right now. So I can search those, and I can say, well, I'm interested in authentication. So I can say authentication, and it's going to start looking for anything that maps to that. And of course, there's some authentication ones that are in here. And in fact, if I keep on saying authentication, and I think that's going to even filter the list a little bit more. There is one here. You see that green check mark says, hey, you already have that one, which I knew I did. But I just wanted to show everybody how you can get to it. But once you click on it and say install, basically what it does is it just takes that one sample and opens it up as a project, and you are now working with a local copy of it without having to download that entire batch of all of them, which isn't a bad idea if you can, but maybe you just want to zero in and only get into some of the specifics. So I am going to cancel out here in Visual Studio and say, well, okay, I don't really want to start a new project, because the truth of the matter is I already have one that is open. And in fact, what I'll do to start is I'll just run it and showcase what this does. This is, in fact, it's almost important to do this from the perspective of every one of these. I'm going to be showing you the shell of each one, authenticating with Facebook or signing in with Twitter. You know, sometimes you go to sites or apps and they're like, how do you want to sign in? And they're offering this other means by which you can sign in. Well, if you don't have some of the data, like you aren't registered to have a Facebook app ID, well, this isn't going to be exciting for you to use. So, but it's very good to understand that you can have all the code just sitting here ready to go for you to plug in your own stuff, and you can start to authenticate through these different means. So that's one. I'm not even going to show the code for that. I just want everyone to know, look at some of those very common ones are already there. Just take advantage of this example. I'm going to shut that one down. I'll go over to Visual Studio again and close that one up and bring up the next one. Now, I got to be careful with this next one, because when I run this one, which is, again, I did it by opening up and I said File, New, and I went and grabbed this online one. You're going to want to search on the term authorization. Authorization will pull it up in the list. And
what's the difference?
Oh, good point. Authentication says, you must be authentic. I really believe you're Jeremy. Authorization says, now that I know that, get out. Now I'm based on decisions based on who you are. So what we want to do now is we want to get into the idea of, well, let me just demo it. I'll just run it. And this is one of the nice things about the Windows SDK examples is they run immediately, and in fact, a little scary right now because it is using my personal data, which, it's showing who my contacts are. It's showing events. Hey, look at that event, Jumpstart, day 2. It's bringing over this data right into here because it was authorized because I signed in, and I had signed in before with my Microsoft account, just like what Jeremy had to do on his machine when he had to sign in for the first time. I had already done that previously. But I have my list of contacts in here. I have my events. So, this is definitely authorized. The code has authorized to go ahead and do that. So, yeah, I better shut that one down. So the danger of doing any kind of authorization or security stuff is you never know what's going to happen.
That's all right, Michael. It's just us.
Yeah, it's just us and the hundreds or thousands that are watching, and will watch furthermore in videos to come. Okay, so instead of getting into the code itself, I think what the main attraction here is to say you need to take advantage of some of the code samples there for more complex scenarios. I didn't go into the specific lines of code. Jeremy kind of touched in on it when he went into the authentication example. But you really, if you download those code samples, you can find out exactly how to get into some of those security scenarios that are going to map to what you need, whether it's for authentication or authorization.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our last module. 6 of 6 for the day. 12 of 12 for the series.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to say real quick, we do have a poll available on the chat right now, so go switch to full screen mode and scroll to the bottom and look for that poll and answer it for us. That would be great. This module is about data and data access.
It's all about the data.
It's all about the data in a number of different ways. So let's go ahead and look at the agenda for this topic. We're going to look at various storage options. You're in an app. You're in a native app. It's not just a website. You've got lots of different options, and there's lots of different types of user data. So we're going to look at those. We're going to look at the XHR. This is for fetching data remotely. It's really powerful. It's a real fundamental principle, so you'll definitely want to know about that. We'll also look at data binding and templating. We saw just a little bit about data binding, but data binding and templating is really super powerful. And then fragment and page rendering also can be powerful if that's what you're trying to do. So let's jump right in. What types of data could we possibly have in an app? I've categorized them this way. There's application state, also called session state. If you're in the web space, you know that you have session data, right? A user comes to your site, and the whole time that they're there, they're one user with one session, and if they log out or exit out of your app, come back the next day, they're the same user with a new session. So a session represents the time that they got on to the time that they closed. So you can have application state. You can also have user settings. These are preferences that should go with your user. Your user wants to keep these bits of information about themselves, and you want to keep those close to the user. They represent the user. This is stuff that in traditional Windows apps would go in the registry. So the registry stores all this information about the user. It's the way that we can keep consistent and give them a consistent experience. There's the possibility of roaming it, so you can even keep their settings going with them wherever they're at. There's also application data. Now, I think the biggest point of confusion is between application data and user data. Application data is the data that's generated by your app, in your app, for your user on this machine and maybe on other devices as well. But it's not really data that the user expects to be able to pull out of the app and use elsewhere or send to a friend or anything.
Right.
It's not like he's saving it in his My Documents, like a Word file.
Sure.
It's rather, imagine like a task list app. You kind of expect to open the task list app and be able to create a task, and rename a task, and check one off, close the app, and I don't know where that data is. I don't really care. I just open my app and it works, right? That's app data. So we're going to look at app data. And then finally, user data. User data is when your user is using your program, your app, to generate data that they kind of expect to be their data. They want to store it in their documents. They want to email it to a friend. They want to back it up online. That's their data. Pictures, Word files, lots of user data. Your app can define its own type and store its users' data in files that go into their documents library, and that type can be associated with your app, and when the user clicks it, it opens your app. So those are the types of data. Now, how do we implement those? This is a code show demo that I made yesterday. So it's actually not the prettiest code. Please don't judge me. It's working. But for a guy who says that his motto is write it right, it's not necessarily written entirely right. So let's look at the different ways that we implement the session data and user settings, application data, and user data. And those are through this Win.js implement called the session state. And session state is for application state. It's for remembering, for instance, what page the user was on, remembering what they had filled out in a form that they haven't finished filling out yet. This is a place for data that you want to drop your stuff if the user gets, for instance, the user's app gets terminated, that session gets terminated. You want to have all of the user's state stored here, so when the user comes back to the app, it gets restored from there. All right? Now, temporary files and local files and roaming, these are three different fundamental ways to save data. Temporary means that you're going to save some files that they're there for the duration of that session for sure, but the next time you come into the app, they may have already been deleted. You just don't know. So don't count on them outside of the session. So you as the developer have a place where you can remember some stuff, but not necessarily forever. Now, local files and local settings, this is your isolated storage. There's no limit to the amount of files that you can save. It's just limited by the user's hard drive. But you can save files and you can save settings. And it's nice that the two are kind of split out, because sometimes settings they're easier to access. You don't have to get into writing the file, reading the file, parsing the contents, and so on. And so you've got both local files, local settings. You also have roaming files and roaming settings. Now, here's my recommendation. Consider roaming first, and only use local if you're certain that you don't want to roam it. The reason why is because roaming is obviously local as well. I mean, when you save something in roaming, it goes local. It saves on the device. It's just that it automatically syncs it up to the user's Microsoft account, to the cloud, and syncs it back down to other devices for them automatically. You don't have to worry about that. Now, if you're sure that you don't want the data to roam, for instance, that it only makes sense to have that data for that one device, then explicitly save it into local. And the other thing is that these roaming files and settings, all combined for your app, can't be larger than 100K. So this isn't the solution for full-scale application data where you can store lots of videos and things like that and expect that that's all going to be synced up to the cloud and back down to another device for the user. That's not its intent. Okay, so it's for files and settings that are going to be less than 100K. If you know that you're going to be storing a lot of data, generating a lot of data, and it's going to be saved as app data, then you would be storing that in the local data. All right? Now, you also might want to store your data in a database. That's very popular. And you also might store your data in a cloud. So let's take a look at the example that we have in Code Show. The Code Show example, and actually I need to rerun it because the gesture one reset my theme to dark.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't look right. So we'll rerun that, and we'll open storage. Now, storage, again, is implemented as a number of sections. And I've divided up these sections by the type of data that we might be concerned with. So the first one is application state. This is, remember, that kind of transient data that stores the contents of where the user was in the app, like the page that they were last on. It stores the values of the form fields and stuff like that. Let's go ahead and type in here, jumpstart. Okay, now I've filled out that form. Mm-hmm. Now let's close our app with Alt F4. Boom.
Don't.
Okay, now let's open it again. And would you expect it to be in there?
I have No idea.
It's not.
It's not there.
I didn't expect it to be in there because there's something I know that you may not. And that is that Windows assumes that if you Alt F4 out of your application, you are explicitly terminating your session and you don't want to keep your session data. Also, if your app crashes for some reason, not that we as developers are going to create apps that crash, but if your app happens to crash, you can't count on that data being stored because it's on its way out in a nice way that it is storing that data. So let's go ahead and try to mimic that. And to mimic that, I'm going to have to go to Visual Studio and run Code Show in debug mode. And I'll show you why.
Okay.
I want this app I want to simulate that this app is being switched away from and it's going into standby mode, and then it's being terminated, which only happens after a certain amount of time or when a certain amount of memory is used up on other things and it has to terminate my app. So I want to simulate that. So I'm going to type in here jumpstart, and then I'm going to switch over to Visual Studio and say I want to suspend and shut down this app. Okay, let me suspend and shut down this app. Oh, now I have to find my button again. There we go. Suspend and shut down. So this app has now been suspended and shut down. It's no longer running. So now I'm going to go back to the start screen and open it again. And there it is. It's restored that state for us. That's helpful. Really helpful.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you. You could tell I was begging for an applause there. So if you want to know how to implement that, just go to that example that is called storage. And you'll see in the JavaScript file that application state is done by, and I'm doing this on blur, so as soon as I get out of that field, I want to store it. So I'm creating an on blur function, and I'm saying I want to refer to the app. Now the app in this case is just an alias for winjs.application. I want to refer to the app session state. This is the field that it's expecting you to put your session state in. Okay? It's just one of the provisions that WinJS gives you. And I put in there a dynamic property. I just called it storage demo.
Whoa.
I put in there a dynamic property and set it to the value of that text box. And then whenever I come back in here, I can see if there's a storage demo, and I can restore the value of that text box with its value if it exists. Okay?
Cool.
That's a pretty simple one. Let's look at the next one. The next one is user settings. This one is also implemented using a blur. So if I type in here local and in here roaming and then I tab out of there, those should be saved even if I Alt F4. So Alt F4, jump back into Code Show, head over to storage, scroll over, look at that. Saved those for me. Nice. There isn't a temporary settings. There's just local and roaming.
Right.
But if we switch over to application data, there is temporary files, like I mentioned. These ones you can't assure they're going to be there. But in fact, it was there. It saved this over the last few launches of the app. But it may very well be deleted on you. And this, I think I might have a bug since I wrote this so recently, but we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and type in here local app data and hit save. And then I'm going to type roaming app data and hit save. And then I'll just say temp app data and hit save. Now I'm explicitly saving these. I could have done it as an on blur again, but in this case it's saving a file. And so I used a click to actually explicitly save that file. Let's go ahead and close my app, reopen it, head back over to storage, and yeah, I've got a bug in there. Darn it. I'll get that fixed. Make sure you subscribe to Code Show so that you can get updates, and we'll get that bug fixed. All right, the next type of data is user data. Now, user data is, again, when you're saving something like an image or a Word file or whatever your app generates, and the user is expecting it to store it in their documents. So let's say I want to save the word jumpstart here. I'm going to jump over to save and hit save. And look at that. It opens that file picker for me. Now, I get to say, I want to save this on my computer, on the C drive, under users, my username, my documents. Let's just save it here. And let's call it jumpstart. It's saving it as plain text. I'll show you why in a second. And I hit save. And it says that jumpstart.txt was saved. Now let's go to my documents and see if, in fact, it did that for us. There's jumpstart right there. And if I open it, with Notepad, I get Jumpstart, the value that I indicated. All right, so really good support for storing data in that sense. And the last demo that I have in the storage section is kind of fun. We're using Azure Mobile Services.
Whoa.
I'm going to bring you to the interface for Azure Mobile Services here. If I log in with my Microsoft account, it gives me access to my Azure space. And I have an Azure Mobile Services app that I've created on Azure Mobile Services. It takes, I'm not kidding, approximately 20 seconds to set the whole thing up. You just go tell it what you want the name of your app to be, whether or not you want data. And you can choose some advanced properties if you want, but you don't have to. It just takes like 20 or 30 seconds, and the whole thing gets set up for you. Apparently, it takes longer to log in. We'll see. But you go to the management portal here, and you're able to set that up, and you're able to browse all of the data. And I'll tell you what Azure Mobile Services is giving to you. It's giving you your data, and it's actually backed by SQL Server, but you don't have to interact with it in a relational way. You can dynamically throw objects at it, and it stores them, still storing them in the, the strength of the SQL Server database, but with the agility of kind of the NoSQL practices. So pretty interesting way to do that. So let me go ahead and type something in here like Jumpstart and hit Save, and then close the app and reopen it. Go back to storage, and there it is.
Oh.
Azure Mobile Services has stored the word Jumpstart in the database. I'd really like to be able to see that in the interface, so hopefully this will come up for us. I'm not sure if maybe it's blocking the port or what, but there we go. Now it's doing some work. You can see there are lots of additions to Azure. If you haven't seen it in a while, there's a bunch of great stuff that it gives to you. We've got media services, mobile services, every kind of database and storage that you can imagine in there. It's getting really super awesome. That's the old portal. The new portal gives you access to some of these things like these media services. We'll wait for this to flesh in, and I'll see if I can show you that if possible. But let's look at the code for that. The storage code for the user settings, remember, let's jump back to the user settings and tell you how we did that, is to access the app data, and I'll tell you what the app data is. The app data is windows.storage.applicationdata.current. This is always available for you. We just made an alias for app data. We can access app data, go to the local settings, access its values, and ask if it has a storage demo value. If it does, then we want to restore it into our text box and actually grab the value of the storage data demo, storage data setting. Likewise, for the roaming settings, it's the same thing, except instead of app data local settings, it's app data roaming settings. Just a difference in name, and all of a sudden that's being roamed. And when I launched CodeShow on a different device, those fields would automatically be filled out for me, because it's roamed those for me. I'm doing these ones on blur, so you can see that in the functions, I'm just storing those in the settings. That one's pretty simple. So the application data section, remember this had the temporary files, and then it had the local, and it had the roaming. And for the temporary, you just use appdata.temporary folder, create a file called storagedemo.txt. It's storing it in that isolated storage for us. It's automatically handling any collisions, and it's writing whatever it is that we typed into that text box. This code is available for you to go look at and reference. It works the same way for temporary, local, and roaming, so I won't bore you by repeating, but let's go look at the next section, user data. Now this one looks kind of big. I actually copied this from one of the SDKs, so there's a lot of safety checks and stuff like that in it. It wouldn't necessarily have to be this big, but essentially what we're doing here is creating a save picker, a file save picker, telling it where we want to start, what kind of file we want to save. This is why that dialog box said plain text. Give it a suggested file name for starters, but let the user go ahead and pick a file name. And then we want to pick a save file asynchronously. We don't know how long the user is going to take to do this. But once they're done picking a file asynchronously, if in fact they picked a file, this is how we want to respond. And we have access, because of the promise, we have access to that file that got passed into us. So we can, for updates, you can read all about why. We can write the text in an asynchronous fashion. And when we've written the text, then we can come out and say, hey, we saved your file. That file was saved. Or capture the else case and say, for some reason, that file could not be saved. So remember, this is actually saving a file. And in this case, it's saving it in the user's documents. And that's because we told it that the suggested starting location was the user's documents library. The user has the control of where things go on their machine. The user is able to say, I want to save something right on the C drive. You as a developer don't have access to do that. You can ask the user to save this wherever they want, and they can choose the C drive, but you can't. You can get programmatic access to the user's libraries as long as you declare that capability, however. Now, the Azure Mobile Services, notice how simple this is. I do, in the project, have a reference to Azure Mobile Services. And then, you guys are seeing my key here. That's completely fine with me. If I see any abuse on my account, I'll just go reset my key. But this is actually my API key and the link to my Azure Mobile Service. So I have codeshow.azuremobile or azure-mobile.net. So this creates a client. And with that client, I can, for instance, say, I want to get this table called app support. I just called it app support. I want to read it. And then after I've read it, I want to filter it by the value that's called storage demo and put the value in that text box. And for storing it, whenever the user clicks the button, I want to simply, with the client, get the table and update using the storage demo. So I've updated the value of the storage demo, and I'm shoving it in to Azure Mobile Services. Not very much code there to get some pretty great functionality. Now all of a sudden, your app is connected to the cloud, so that's pretty awesome.
That is cool.
We had the mobile services, websites, virtual machines, and media services are in preview right now, so that's why we're running into an error right here, so unfortunately I can't show that to you. Okay, that's quite a bit of information about data. A lot of people ask about the use of databases for storing their data. There's less support for database in Windows 8, honestly, in Windows 8 Store apps. And the reason is because you're encouraged to push your data and data access up to the cloud. It's a better model anyway. But we want to have a light UI that accesses our data from outside. Now that said, there still are some provisions for database. We're in a true HTML JavaScript environment, and in HTML5, we've got access to IndexedDB, which is a local NoSQL index-based database, and you can use that, full support for that. There's also a database called SQLite that's fairly popular. It's third-party, and SQLite works and is supported entirely in the framework, so you can use that as well. So there is some database support, but I would encourage you to use a database in the cloud and to connect your data that way. It's going to be future-proofing your app. Wow, so that was storage. What do you think?
I think that's cool. I have to mention a comment based on the SQLite and your Azure mobile services.
Yeah?
There was an event that we did where we have these hackathons where developers are competing frantically to build an app in a certain amount of time. This one gentleman just gave up on SQLite, and he says, I just gave up on that, and I decided I had to use mobile Azure, or the Azure mobile services, and then it was easier to use. And I thought, easier than SQLite, and it's really true. You can be out on the cloud doing something simpler.
Yeah.
With the Azure mobile services. So
yeah.
I thought that was
easy.
Really fun.
And the nice thing is that it doesn't just give you the data, it also gives you that authentication, and it gives you the push notification services, so you can talk to your live tiles and notification.
Yep.
Pretty great. Hey, everybody. Welcome back
Hello.
to day 2
Yes.
of this Jumpstart series. We're going to have a good day today. I am Electrify, and this is my colleague Elevate.
Yes, yeah. In fact, we have so much content going on today, and we're so excited about this. we're going to get right to the intros. And I just want to quickly introduce Mr. Jeremy Foster. He is the mastermind behind CodeFoster.com and also the one who founded Code Show, which is where all the code samples are from. And really excited to work with you today. We're going to have a blast.
Yep. And we're reviewing our introductions because some of us are maybe new today. A lot of you were here yesterday. You already know us. But anyway, like you said, I'm Jeremy Foster. I'm working with Michael Palermo, multiple-time author, and somebody who I've benefited from a lot by watching his Pluralsight videos. If you can get a Pluralsight subscription, look for the CSS videos done by Michael Palermo. Very helpful. So, So that's us, and we're going to talk again a little bit about the course that we're doing today. You may have seen it yesterday. This is an accelerated certification prep jump start.
Yeah, it's these yesterday and today mapped to specific exams, and today it maps to the
481.
70-481.
Yep, absolutely. Yesterday was more web content. Today we're going to be more specific into Windows 8 content. So we get to look at the nature of developing for this new and exciting platform. It's a fun space to be in right now. It is real fast pace. If you go do a search for 7481, you'll find the course online, the training course online, and it will have the skills measured section, and you can see everything that's going to be covered or represented in that exam. Now, we're going to have the same scope and sequence roughly, but we're not going to be able to reach all of the content because we are at about 500% for pace. And we're basically taking 5 days of content and putting that in 1 day of training. So there actually are 5-day courses. You can go to some of our learning partners if you want to sign up for some of the longer courses. We had some questions in the chat room yesterday about this Code Show, the project, and how to get that to work. There are a couple caveats that some of the people were facing. Basically, you just go to codeshow.codeplex.com. Codeplex is built on, actually, it was recently upgraded to TFS 2012. So it's based on Microsoft's latest ALM product. It's extremely powerful, and yet it's extended through Codeplex as a great community for open source software and collaboration. So I basically just created an open source project called Code Show, and you guys can go log into Codeplex, you can follow Code Show, and then you can download the source code. And if you just want to download the source code, you just get a snapshot of it. But if you want, you can also go in, make sure that you have a Code Show username, and then you can go to the source code tab and you can go to connect, and you can look at the TFS credentials and real easily add those into Visual Studio. And then you have like a live source control connection to the project. And anytime we make little updates, which we do pretty much every day, you'll get those updates. All you have to do is get latest version.
And if you don't want to do that, and you just want simply the snapshot, I installed just the snapshot on our little demo machine here just a moment ago. And all you have to do is just download the complete files. And when you open it up, yesterday there were some people that said, "Oh, I'm getting these errors." I got them too. You know, it says, "Hey, this is a source control thing." You just keep saying, just show me my project. You know, just keep going.
Ignore source control, because you can just kick the source control out. Now, if you did download Code Show yesterday and you don't have the live source control connection, you're going to need it again today, because we were working last night.
Yeah.
What can we say?
We love our jobs.
Absolutely. And then after you download it, if you just open it up right away, you're going to get some messages that are, when you try to build it and run it, you're going to get some messages that say that some SDKs are missing. That's because Code Show has dependencies on some external SDKs, like the Bing Maps and Live Maps and all these different SDKs that we've got installed there. So just go into the bin folder. Those are delivered with the project. Go into the bin folder, and there's the installations for all of those SDKs.
Yep.
Very good. Simple as that. Oh, by the way, it does require Windows 8 RTM.
Oh, yeah.
If by chance you installed Windows 8 on your box, say months ago or weeks ago, you probably didn't get the RTM version. When did RTM?
Oh, I mean,
drop?
It dropped a couple months ago.
I guess, yeah.
Somewhere in
I
that
forgot
time
exactly
frame.
when.
So if you have a MS-DAN account, you'd be able to get the RTM, or you can get a 90-day trial.
Yeah, you can get a 90-day trial of it and get the RTM. Yeah, but if you have the RP, then you're going to get some errors. It's possible to get that converted over, but it's not always clean, and we wouldn't have time to walk you through that in the chat room for sure. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on the content today. Actually, we are probably mostly developers in the room right now, And our first session is going to be one of design. So this is where sometimes developers just throw up their hands and they say, you know what, this is not for me. But please don't do that. Stick around. Because we're not just talking about graphics design. We're not just talking about people who know their way around Adobe Photoshop. We're talking about the design of your whole app, the whole experience. We're talking about user experience design. So it's the architecture, it's the graphics, it's the where to put buttons or where not to put buttons, it's how to set up your margins, all of this stuff that has to do with design. It's been hugely important. We actually have had a number of hackathons in various cities in the West region where Michael and I work, and it seems like more people are asking questions about design than the development. I guess as developers, we're kind of used to looking up the APIs and finding the methods and figuring out how to do things like that, but here, Microsoft is delivering with Windows 8 not just a development language, but really a whole design language.
Absolutely.
And it's quite a bit to wrap our heads around.
Those new features also that we're going to be getting into, how to design for new features that we've never even used before. That's a real key thing. So stay tuned. Like Jeremy said, if you're a developer and you're thinking, I don't need this design stuff, you really should really fully embrace this discussion.
Yeah, it's great. If only to understand it, even if you're not going to be the primary designer on a larger project, it's great just to understand that. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Actually, we're going to look at two aspects of design. First of all, I'm expecting that a lot of you have some web platform experience, and you've worked on websites, or you've maybe even created your own full-scale websites. And so I want to talk a little bit about the differences between web apps and Windows 8 apps.
Yeah.
Very different space.
And this is an item of confusion for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They'll come in and they're not quite sure exactly what role everything plays. So this is a great discussion to kind of just put that to rest.
Yeah. Because the two are similar and different at the same time. And then we're going to jump into kind of some standard Windows 8 design content that's pretty cool. Really enjoy it. Okay, so the differences between web apps and Windows 8 apps are going to be addressed. We're going to talk about cross-platform issues, because a lot of people have that question. We did discuss horizontal scrolling a little bit, but I want to hit on that again today. And then also kind of the question of why native. Why would I take my web skills and use those to build an app on Windows 8 instead of just sticking with the web? Now, the primary differences, and these are, there's some subjectivity in this, but this is just from my experience. The primary differences look like this. Now, there's a link here I want to jump you out to real quick. And this is an article on MSDN about the differences between the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript on the web and in Windows. This is a very good article. You can just do a search for the title here on MSDN, and it should be pretty easy to find. But this enumerates all the differences between the way that the links work and the local and web context, the navigation models. On the web, we usually do hyperlinking, and in an app, we can do hyperlinking, but we usually don't. We usually use a single-page application model where we just use a navigation framework to get from one virtual page to another. Asynchronicity is a huge issue in app design, and as is the dynamic modification of HTML. However, when you're in an app, Windows does a lot of safety checking for you whenever you're inserting into the DOM so that you don't run into any script injection security concerns. So this is a great article for you to peruse, and subsequently this HTML and DOM API changes list. These are just really great articles. I highly suggest that you go check that out. Now, the scrolling direction is one of the main differences. Typically on a website, we have a vertical scroll, and typically in a Windows 8 app, we have a horizontal scroll. We generally have less content per view. It's not that we have an app that inherently has less content than a website. We could have more content than a website, but per view, we tend in an app to not put as much on the screen because we want to just focus on what the user is doing right now. And that's a very different experience than most websites. The trend on websites has been to pack in tons and tons of content, and that's not a great practice in an app where we want to give the user an immersive experience. There's generally better touch support in an app than there is on the web. However, the lines get blurry because the same engine that's running Windows 8 is running the new IE10. And if you go to ietestdrive.com and look at the Photos app on there, it is pretty amazing If I had a touch screen, I think I'd show it to you right now. But you can go grab photos, stretch them, pivot them. And I played with it on a 30-point touch monitor the other day. And we had 3 people, each of us with 4 fingers on the screen,
Wow.
stretching and moving. And this was a website.
Yeah.
This was on a
That's very
website.
cool.
So, yeah. Great touch support, though, of course, built into the platform. You've got access to the Windows runtime. So all of the stuff that's available in the Windows API is extended up through all of the different language stacks. You've got JavaScript can access it, C# can access it, C++ can access it. And the cool thing is you pretty much access it the exact same way. The subtle differences are to kind of conform to the nature of the different languages. So in JavaScript, we like to start our functions with a lowercase letter, and in C# we like to start them with an uppercase letter. And so that's the way they're projected into our languages. And likewise, we get full access to the Win.js, including all of these controls that we're going to actually look at today. And that's available to you when you're running native. Some of the Win.js stuff is available to you when you're in the web context, so it can be extended to the web. But most of it is only available if you're running an app.
Yeah.
So what about cross-platform matters? Here's the dream. Everybody says, I want to write an app one time and I want to have it work everywhere. Now, the problem with that dream, if you've heard me talk before, you know that I'm not a huge advocate of chasing that unicorn. And the reason is because we have numerous platforms, and that's not likely going away anytime soon. And users demand a native experience. You can look at the cold hard facts and see that whenever you have layers of abstraction trying to accommodate multiple platforms in one code set, you have users that are not necessarily having a good experience. There are delays in the feedback say I touch a button and it's a few milliseconds before it looks like it's been touched, and it's not a great experience. And these ecosystems are very diverse. It's very difficult to abstract all of those, and it's a moving target. I am an advocate for writing one really good data and service layer and then a lot of UI instantiations that are native in your different environments. So if you want to make a website and a Windows 8 app, that's a great idea. You get certain things with a website that you don't get with a Windows 8 app, and you get a lot of stuff with a Windows 8 app that you don't get with a website. So
yeah, I really like that you emphasize the fact that if you're going to have that write once mentality, what you want to do is you want to write it once at that service or data layer.
Yeah.
Not focused on trying to reuse the UI everywhere.
Yeah. In one of our demos today, we're actually going to be looking at Azure Mobile Services. And Azure Mobile Services is what is kind of informally called backend as a service, where you can create your push notification and all your data support, your authentication, all that can be done for you in the service, as well as some logic on insert and on update. You can run certain scripts, and that's a huge provision. And that's not just for Windows 8. You can use Azure Mobile Services to drive your website and your iPhone app and whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. So what about this horizontal scrolling? This is a pretty unique and differentiating feature. Very different. We saw a little bit of this yesterday. Very different from typical scrolling on websites. Now, there are a number of really good reasons for the horizontal scrolling. One of them is the fact that the majority of languages have that left to right as a reading direction, in their language.
Yeah.
And then also, we're dealing with screens more and more that are 16 by 9. They're a wider aspect ratio. And so we actually fit more stuff on the screen in a horizontal direction. That's just the way it is. Going horizontally reads like a magazine that people are used to, and the motion, the gesture of turning the pages is a lot like a magazine. And your arm more naturally moves left to right than it does up and down. So there's a lot of good reasons to do that horizontal scrolling. Now, why, if I'm a web developer and I know how to make web apps, and I can make web apps, why would I make a native app? What do you think? Why would you?
I would want to take advantage of all the native features.
Like?
Speed.
Oh, absolutely.
Not having to do back and forth communications just to render UI.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we have, like I said, the entire WinRT API is available to us when we're running natively. All of these fancy features that in animation and stuff in the CSS that Michael was showing us yesterday are hardware accelerated. So inherently, the performance is drastically better. Again, I point you to ietestdrive.com, shows off that speed. It is, if you've got the IE engine running, then you're hardware accelerated, and you can go, for instance, run the bubbles example, and you can have like 200 little different bubbles going on the screen, and you can look at the frame rate and see what that does to IE, and you can get a feeling for what that hardware acceleration gives you. It's dramatic.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah. You also have these native contracts that give the user a really good experience. In all the different apps, a user knows that they can always swipe for charms, touch on share, or touch on search, and it's going to work the same way every time. And you get to implement those in your app. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's very good.
You also have user data. So on a website, you've got local storage, so you've got some provision for keeping local data. But in an app, as we're going to see a little later today, actually in the last module, you've got a lot of support for different ways to store data locally on your machine. You also have PLM. So you get to, this is the program lifecycle, where you get to capture these events where the application has started and when it stops, when it's put to rest, goes into standby, or it's terminated altogether, and you get to react to those and give the user a good experience saving their state. And again, we're going to look at that. Now, you get a general increase in the overall user experience by following the design principles and by using a native platform. The higher speed, the integration, the consistency, this is generally a better user experience for users, and that's really what we're all about. Okay, so let's jump into 8 traits of good Windows app design. All right? Now, this is the list of those 8 traits. They all look like they're on par, but actually that content before Chrome at the beginning is a pretty huge section, and the rest of them are going to move pretty quick. So we're going to jump right into content before Chrome, which is an extremely critical principle in Windows 8 design. Now, let me define these terms. Content is all of the reasons why the user opened your app in the first place. If you have a photo app, they opened it to look at photos, sometimes to look at a single photo. If they're looking at a list of photos, that's what we should show them, is a list of photos. And if they're looking at a single photo, that's what we should show them, is that single photo. And just that. We want to immerse the user in their content. Now, Chrome is simply everything that's not content. So if the picture is your content, then some button about your picture, we're going to consider that to be Chrome. And we're not saying all content, no Chrome. We're saying content before Chrome. Content is the important thing, and Chrome should only come in when it's supportive, when it's helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because Chrome can distract the user from their content. And so that's not what we want. We want to immerse them in their content and minimize the Chrome to minimize those distractions. So what you see on the screen right now is a visualization, a drawing with a typical experience with a Windows legacy app. And even if you haven't, even if there's no content inside that pane, we all recognize this, right? Because this looks like a legacy app. We've got a taskbar and a window. Now, the thing I want to point out to you in this is that is entirely Chrome.
Yeah. There's no content.
There's no content on the screen. Yeah, you might think there is at first, but you look around and you're like, wait a minute, this is all information about information. This is entirely meta.
It's sad.
There's no friends, there's no stock quotes, there's no anything, right?
Right.
Now, a typical experience with a Windows 8 app would look more like this. And the thing I want to point out is that there's no Chrome.
That's right.
There's nothing in here that is information about information. What you're actually seeing is the user's friends, the stock quotes, whatever it is that you open this app for.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that example because you don't even see any navigation on there.
Yep.
But it's even somewhat implied by the way that the final blocks over there were kind of on the side of that screen. So it's really nice to see that you can even see that inferred navigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, some people are noticing that the discoverability of this is perhaps less than the discoverability of this. Because here we have all of this Chrome that's saying you could close or you could minimize or you could launch. And here we don't have any of that. And that's okay because once a person learns how to use a doorknob, they can open any door in the world.
There you go.
And once I know that any of my general commands I can bring up my app bar and use, I'm going to know that for every app in the world. So these are the 3 main reasons why we have Chrome. Layout, interactions, and navigation. And these 3 things don't go away. They're critical. You know, we still need to lay out our content, we still need to interact with it, and we still need to navigate it. But we just do it differently in good Windows 8 design. So layout. Instead of drawing lines on the screen to separate bits from bits, we instead are not afraid to add some space. After all, now we can flow from edge to edge, so we've got the whole screen to deal with, so we can afford to put 120 pixels of space on the left side of our content. No problem with that at all. We also use what's called a typographic ramp. The font that is used in general in Windows 8 apps is the Seago font, and it's 42, 20, 11, and 9. And those all have good meaning, and the differences in size between those different font types indicates the hierarchy of the content on the page. We also pan along a single axis, so we don't generally pan both vertically and horizontal at the same time, unless you're in something like Maps or a web page where it totally makes sense. But generally, we have rails. That means that we just pan horizontally, and the user feels locked and secure in that one axis. And then we use what we call the design silhouette. We'll talk more about this in just a couple slides. The design silhouette is the amount of space on the left and the top and the type ramp, and all of that stuff makes up the silhouette so that users recognize a Windows 8 app when they see it. Now here is an app that, again, even if you haven't used this generic RSS reader, you probably recognize it as a typical legacy Windows program, right? Now, the thing about this app is it illustrates for us very well the layout, the navigation, and the interaction Chrome that exists. You see the layout is, for instance, this, this bar right here. Whoops. Let me get my pen. Pointer options. Is that going to work? Oh, it's not working for me right now. Anyway, the layout is, for instance, these lines that are separating bits from bits. The interaction is all of these buttons on the top and the side, and then the navigation is all of these links to other content that, even though we're not looking at it right now, we might. So we've got some navigation for it.
It's kind of hard to tell what's really important right now on that screen.
What is important?
That's right.
Where is it? It's right there.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the content right there. That's what the user is currently doing. And yet it only gives us maybe 25% of our space for it. So how about something more like this?
Yeah.
That's a Windows 8 app right there. The content is the front. It's front and center on stage. And notice that we have more space around things. We've got room to breathe. We can tell easily what the title of the app is because it's in 42 point at the top, and we can tell easily what the headers of what the group sections are because they're in 20 point at the top of each of these bits of content, and then we can see the separation between the groups because there's 80 pixels of space in between them. And there's a philosophy for all of this design. It's a whole framework that's delivered to you as the developer, and you can get exhaustive information about this by going to design.windows.com, which is just a subset of dev.windows.com. It's all the same dev center, but if you go to design.windows.com, you can send your fast hat wearing designer friends to design.windows.com, and they can download the Adobe Photoshop assets, and they can really geek out on all the design aspects of Windows 8. Really some great stuff there. Now let's look at this silhouette. If I overlay these blue lines, you can see that we've got this consistent amount of space between the top of the screen and the bottom of our header. We also have a consistent amount of space on the left margin. The top is actually 100 pixels, and the left is 120. These are called units in Windows 8 design, 20 pixels in a unit, and you can get all of these specs on design.windows.com. There's not necessarily a prescription for the amount of space on the bottom. That's up to you. You just want to make sure that you leave some room so it doesn't look like the content is falling off and inviting a vertical scroll.
That's right, yeah.
And we also are falling off the screen on the right, indicating that we could go ahead and swipe. It just makes you want to swipe. I don't even have a touch screen right here, and I just want to swipe it.
I hear you.
It's not going to do anything, though. Yeah, so there's prescriptions on all of this padding. And when you start using this silhouette in multiple apps, you'll notice these 4 apps still have their own personality for sure, but they all follow the same design silhouette.
Yeah,
so they're recognizable as good design. You can also depart from the typical layout and still try to still try to follow the principles. Notice that the title of this song is still the same distance from the top. We still have 120 pixels of margin on the left. These are not prescriptions. They're just principles, okay? So just take that into account and know that these are tested to have very good user experience, especially when we've got a lot of apps that use the same principles. That tends to delight the users. And you can get a little bit creative, use some different silhouettes, and they're all good Windows 8 design. Here's that type ramp, 42, 20, 11, and 9. The different sizes indicate the importance or the significance or the hierarchical place of each of those individual items.
That's good.
Yeah.
We talked about design already, and now we're going to jump right into how we can start to
of course,
really develop.
The rest of the day is going to be development, but this is kind of an introduction to development.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. So especially if you're brand new to developing with Microsoft technologies or the tooling, this is going to be a fantastic journey for you. And I'd even say even those who are seasoned pros, they might not know about some of the things that we're going to be saying here about the tools. So you might want to stay tuned and see if there's any little tips and tricks you can pick up there. So that puts us right here at right after the design to get into development, and our module agenda is going to start with some tooling. We want to discuss, what are our options for developing, and then we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on project templates so that we can understand what really is the structure inside of a Windows 8 application, specifically with JavaScript and HTML. And then we're going to formally introduce the WinJS library. So, tooling. We get questions on Visual Studio Editions quite a bit. And so this is a snapshot. In fact, I put the URL near the top, and I'm going to tell you right now as I zoom up here for you to see that. Even if you just go as far as just to say Microsoft.com/Visual Studio, it's probably going to take you pretty close to where I got this from. And it allows you to see the various editions that are out there. Ultimate is at the very top, and it goes down to... So I thought, I'm not going to give an exhaustive explanation of what each edition is or what the pricing structure is. That's for anybody else to go and explore.
Although I will say that if you're a developer, it's worth it to spend I think it's $11.99, about $1,200 for a year, for an MSDN subscription, and you get Windows 8, Visual Studio Ultimate, or is it Professional? Something like that.
I'd have to go back to the site and check it out.
And a lot of Azure time, a lot of Azure credit, and a whole bunch of other things. So go check out an MSDN license if you're a full-time developer. That's worth it.
Sure. And so there's some that are like, well, in order to develop for Microsoft, do we have to spend that money? Granted, I think it's a good deal, but you really don't have to. And the reason why is because, well, we also support the Express product. So let's take a look at that as well. And I think there was a question yesterday, or there was a little bit of confusion. If you downloaded one of the Express 2012 products, that doesn't necessarily mean you could do Windows 8, or store development. There's different Express products for each category of the kind of development you want to do. So if I zoom in here on the screen, you'll see that that's really the main attraction. There's a web development Express, and then there's the Windows 8 exclusive. There's one for Windows Desktop, and then there's the Team Foundation Server Express. So those products, price tag, pretty easy. But you're not going to be able to do what you can with some of the other products, such as a team collaboration or large-scale projects, or you're not going to be...
There's some team collaboration.
There's a little bit, but you're not going to have also the ability to have just one tool to do all things. You'd have to have the different, Express versions for the different types of development you want to do. Having said that, those who have been using the Express for Windows 8 have been pretty pleased with their experience.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this gives us an opportunity now to even get into, finally, the tool and start to demo some of this stuff. So the code is going to be great. I'm going to switch over into Visual Studio. And I've opened up Visual Studio, and the first thing that I want to highlight is, of course, that the Solution Explorer is kind of what your file system view is of your entire project. A solution can be one or more projects. And I gave myself a little reminder through a feature that can be used inside of Solution Explorer, and that's adding your own little documentation if you choose to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that tooling text, and that's going to let me say, okay, so I have Visual Studio 2012 is on my brain right now during this demo. I would like to highlight the solution project and item scenario, and I also want to really get into the simulator. And the reason why I wanted to focus on that is because there's going to be opportunities where people are going to really be excited about developing for Windows 8, but they might have a machine and they're like, well, how am I going to be able to test for touch? How am I going to be able to know if I don't have a geolocation? How am I going to be able to test for that? What if there's certain gestures that I want to see if they're going to work or not? So that's one of the advantages of having the simulator, is that you can run not on the context of just your machine, but run in the context of a simulator that would allow you to, of course, simulate touch and some of the other features that would be important. So before I get to the simulator, I still want to dive a little bit into the project structure. So I'm going to zoom back into here and just indicate that a solution in itself is usually, you could kind of almost look at it as, this is more like a folder of projects. That's one kind of easy way to think about it. This would be the project level. And then everything that's inside here would be items inside of that project. And I'm going to get into the project templates and the items inside them in more detail, but to organize your stuff, that's what Solution Explorer is for. The simulator, which is up here, I have an option. Yesterday, for the most part, we were running in local machine mode, which means let's go ahead and build and then deploy that app right to this local machine. When you have simulator checked, it's going to simulate your entire operating system and then display it. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to click on simulator. And you'll notice that it is bringing up the application in the context of this simulated view. What are some of the advantages? Well, one of the advantages would be that you can switch to a touch mode. So that means right now I'm in cursor mode, so if I click on things and move around, that I'm just doing simple mouse clicks. With touch mode, I now have the ability to, if I could swipe in certain directions. I don't know if you could see that little swirl that's kind of following here, but what's kind of fun is that I can click this Windows key, and even though I was in the app, I can still navigate the system. So I can use this touch and say, let me go ahead and just swipe across this way. So if you needed to see how that works, and you don't have a touch-enabled screen like we don't have at this time, then, yeah. Yeah. So I can also simulate it. So this is kind of like single touch, for swipe and that. Sure. I can also go in here and say, well, let me try a pinch zoom touch mode.
Multi-touch simulation.
Yes. So I'll click on that. And the trick here is that I can be click down, and then with my mouse wheel, I can let me do this again. Different mouse that I don't normally use.
It's not doing it.
Normally
you see those two dots move toward and away from each other like a pinch. There it is.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sort of getting it. It's this mouse is a little tricky with the wheel. Yeah. Well, imagine. I almost have it there. Come on, you could do it. You could do it. Yay! We got ourselves a semantic zoom. Okay, I'm gonna fire this mouse when we're done. And now I truly do wish that I had a full screen or a touch screen. So let me go back. And I'm going to also showcase that if I wanted to do a rotation right here, what if I want to see things in portrait? You know, we can't take our screens right now and just flip them. That's not going to do anything, but we can see what a portrait view would look like here, which is really nice.
Can I just point out that in portrait mode, it actually is still panning horizontally.
Ooh,
take note.
That's good. So let me go back to this single basic mode since I don't like the mouse here. But yeah, look at that. I'm proving your point. Isn't that great? All right, I'm going to switch back over to this view, which is going to take us back to the screen. Let me hit that again. Let me go back. I'm going to stop the simulator. I think it also fired the mouse, so I'm going to rerun it. Whoop. Try it again. Well, that is a shame. Would you be able to possibly run the simulator? I just wanted to show one other feature.
Let's jump to mine, and we'll run a project that I think you'll find familiar. What's that?
Nice. Well, the other aspect was what if you don't? You were just there, that screen, the little screen. What if you have a device that doesn't have large resolutions and you wanted to simulate those large resolutions?
Absolutely. This is a good opportunity to show what I was talking about in the design,
Sure.
where I'm going to go from a 10.6 with this resolution, 1366 by 768, up to 2560 by 1440, but without changing my screen size.
That's right.
So there we go. And I want you to notice how the content, whoa, that wasn't right. Let me launch that again.
Sure.
Notice how the content in this case is laid out a little bit different. I thought it was not going to be. Let's try the 27.
Yeah.
When I go up in screen size, I would expect it to. Oh, I know why. We have our screens in a different mode.
Yeah.
We've got our screens. Ease of access is turned on for us, and that's goofing this up.
That's right. I think that's important for everyone to know, and that may have been one of the reasons why my simulator went down. Is we were wanting to make sure that everyone could see what we're doing.
Right.
So we've kind of changed our visual settings to accommodate that. So that's probably why we're having.
Yeah, but this is emulating a 27-inch screen now. You can see I don't even have to pan to see all of the tiles on this app.
That's nice.
Because I have so much screen space.
Very cool. Now, the other one is that little world-looking thing. You click on that. So sometimes if you don't have geolocation, what that does is that, of course, gives you that opportunity to simulate your own little location somewhere.
Let's give it a try. I like to allow the map access, and then I could, for instance, just go down to something more like, I think 38 is around San Francisco. Boom.
Whoa.
It's taking me to San Francisco.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So that's all. Thank you for letting us use your particular machine for that. But yeah, using the simulator can be very, very helpful. Don't let your device, whatever you have for development, be the reason why you don't take advantage of other device features or some of the features that are in the apps that you can leverage, because you do have a simulator that can be used in order to test those things out. And of course, it's great if you can eventually test with the real device, but that simulator is going to at least let you, not be an inhibitor to development.
By the way, we do have device labs that you can join, where you can go in your geography. You can find the closest one to you, and you can go when you're working on your app. You can test it out on a number of different devices. They're going to have lots of different kinds of hardware there, so we want to help in that way.
Yes. Okay. I am going to get back into Visual Studio, and I get back into our project. And the next thing that I want to showcase, which is really super nice, is the ability to also use Blend. So I have Visual Studio open, but we haven't really formally given Blend an introduction. And Blend is a product. In fact, you could easily get to it, by the way, when you're in Windows 8 by pressing the Windows or Start key, typing BLEN. It just becomes your only option. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. Blend is also a tool that we can use to develop Windows Store apps.
So when would I use Blend and when would I use Visual Studio?
That's the key. So Blend is really the tool that is for the designer. I mean, it's kind of a design first tool where Visual Studio is kind of your develop first tool. And so especially if you have someone coming in who is very good with CSS, really great at the markup, maybe they're not really into the coding aspects of things. It's not that you couldn't code with Blend, but it's really that design first experience.
Yeah. And actually, I'm totally a developer. I've always been the guy that stays in Visual Studio most of the time, but I'm extremely impressed with Blend. It doesn't act so much like a huge layer of abstraction so you don't know what's going on with your code. Instead, it acts as a really good window to your code and some really great design tools. But it always keeps you in real close contact, and it never changes your code without you telling it to.
Yeah. So I have what I've just done inside of Blend is I just opened up the project that I was just in. So if I zoom in onto this portion of the screen, I can see that demo app is exactly the one that I just had open. And, a concern would be, well, what if you have multiple people working, let's say some in Visual Studio and some in Blend? Are changes that you're going to make in here going to apply, or is there going to be some conflicts? And I'd just like to demonstrate that one real quick, just to see what would happen. So I'll go over to this demos block here, and you can see that we have a different experience when we're inside of this mode. And if I wanted to change it, way down here at the bottom, when I'm clicking on anything, it'll show me in the HTML where that content is. It also shows it to me over here in what's called the live DOM. So I have two different ways that I can go and address how I want to get to that particular content. I can change it in multiple ways. Right now what I'm going to do is change it using just right down here. Maybe I'll call it Jump Start Demos, like so. And now that I've done that, I can go ahead and run it. So I can go to this project area or to the view or the tools. Sorry, my machine just became... There we go. I just hit F5. I couldn't find the mouse is definitely going to get fired here in a second. But I just used the keyboard shortcut to get here. So I'm running that particular demo locally on this machine. So it did apply that change. I will stop that and go back into Blend. Now what would happen if I open this in Visual Studio? If I were to find Visual Studio here and go to the default HTML page, or specifically the home page, and open up that, you could see that Jumpstart Demos applied there. Had I had this file open prior to going to that Blend tool, I would have probably had some kind of screen that popped up and said, hey, you know what, it looks like there was a change. Do you want to go ahead and synchronize that? And I say, sure, yeah, go right ahead. So I'll go back into Blend. So when you make changes in Blend, the nice thing is that you get to see these changes immediately. And I know that kind of sounds like, so what's the big deal? The big deal is you may at times, when you're in Visual Studio, you're going to want to do some very simple, rapid design type things, like changing the background color or the foreground color. And when you're doing that, if you just want to see those things immediately take place, you seem like you're always running the app just to find out, oh, so how did that look? So how did that look? So how did that look? Where instead what you could do is you can actually apply very easy style techniques here in Blend and just see those results right away. And it even extends further than that, of course, and I know that we both had experience with this, where not only could you apply a style in Blend and see it right away, But with certain modes, you'd actually start to see even some live data if it's already hooked up to use live data.
I'd actually like to
inside of
show
Blend.
that.
You would on your screen?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Sure.
Let's go to, again, an app that you guys will probably be familiar with called Code Show. I'm going to right-click on Code Show and open this in Blend. I just tried this just now just to see how well it worked, and it worked beautifully. Now, when you open the project, it assumes that you're designing it. Okay, so this is design and execution at the same time. This blows my mind. Like, this is the first time I've ever seen an IDE that allows you to design and execute simultaneously. So first of all, notice that it took JavaScript to run and look up all the demos to build this page. So just this page is kind of amazing.
That's very cool.
Now, let's say I want to do some design on this page, like change the size of the tiles. I click once. I need to keep clicking multiple times to drill into the actual item that I want, and then I can change that item, and it's smart enough to know where that CSS attribute is defined, that property is defined in order to make that tile that size. And notice that when I change it, it changes, not that one, if I change the actual tile size, it changes all of the tiles because it's changing a CSS style that applies to multiple things. Now, if I want to go look at, for instance, the list views example, or actually, now let's go to a more fun one. Let's go to the Netflix trickle. Now, I can't go there because I'm in design mode. So if I go up here to the interactive, now all of a sudden it's like I'm using the product. I'm a user. I'm clicking on Netflix trickle, and when I click on it, it navigates there. Okay, and actually, I think it was the Netflix by 10 that I wanted to show you. Here we go. Netflix by 10. So now I've navigated to that page, and now I'm going to jump out of interactive mode. I know it might be hard to see, but I'm hitting this button on the very top right. I navigate out of interactive mode, and now I'm manipulating the images that are on this individual template. So you can see that this whole project can be done in Blend, and the whole thing is done visually. And you have full control over which style sheet you're talking to. It makes assumptions based on if you're changing the width, and I know that's defined over here, then that's what I'm going to change for you. But you have control over where your change actually gets affected. And then you can even see that over on the right, notice how the position of this item, I can't change that right now because it's saying that change was done in JavaScript. That's not a CSS property. So you can't just come over here and change that willy-nilly. You're going to have to go look up where that's changed in the JavaScript and manipulate that. So absolutely brilliant tool. And the cool thing, too, is that the entire live DOM, not just like the HTML as it exists, but the DOM as it was loaded based on all your JavaScript is always available over here on the left.
So what would happen if you hit Control-0 on your keyboard right now?
Let's give it a try.
So that's a nice little tip trick for using Blend. It'll automatically size the screen to whatever real estate. So if you expanded everything out, you can increase it again. Just remember, Control-0 will always fit that screen right wherever you want it to, based on your real estate.
I love how this margin is given to us. It's kind of hard to see there. Let me zoom in. But this margin is given to us, just kind of as a visual glyph so that we can see what that is.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thanks for jumping in and doing that.
Absolutely.
That's very good. Now, there was a question that came up about, what tools are being used for the zooming. And Jeremy just used the built-in magnifier zoom that is on Windows. It's been on Windows for a little while. The tool that I'm using is called Zoom It, which is available at if you go to Bing and type Zoom It,
that'll do it.
You'll find it.
Who needs URLs anymore? Just
That's
search
right.
it.
Just search it. Yeah, it's almost the way to find and navigate everything these days.
Yeah.